6:29, 1 minute. We're looking very well. I know. Yes. Off already? Off already around? Oh, look at that. Yeah, maybe. Under out the door, you got all that shit, Bobby, so. Yeah. Oh, you got me for an hour. Oh, that's good. It's a 2 hour minute. It's half an hour to get down here. It's half an hour to get back. Sure, 5 minutes. Perfect. All right. There. Ready to go? All right.
You ready?
Good evening, everyone. If I can have your attention.
Folks, we'd like here. We ask you all to settle down so we can get you, we're trying to get you in and out of here in 2 hours.
Right.
We got a lot to do tonight. So if you can settle down here, we're gonna have Paul give a brief introduction and then kick off the real business part of the meeting, okay?
Well, good evening again. We have a very special meeting of the Old Zoning Commission this evening where you will see the Old Zoning Commission and that'll be it. We're not going to be running anything. We are going to have our consultant, Francisco Gomes from IMG, who is our consultant for the, what is it?
IMEG.
Oh, IMEG.
That's right.
Well, that's E's for environment. Who has been working on the process that is guiding us along. So it's going to be their meeting. We're going to be doing some unique things here. One of the big things is we are going to be breaking out into either 2 or 3 groups. That's up to Francisco. These are breakout groups. These are to capture your thoughts on this. Again, this is residential housing. So we expect lots of ideas to come out. They will guide you. The zoning commission will probably intersperse in these groups. We will not lead any conversations. We will not engage with you in trying to discuss the merits of your idea. Every idea is a good idea, and we want to make sure that we capture it on the flip charts. So with that, we should be here for 2 hours, 6:30 to 8:30. Francisco.
Well, thank you very much. Hi, I'm Francisco Gomes with IMEG, and I'm joined by my colleagues at the back of the room, Tony Pignatelli and Rory Jacobson, that will help facilitate our meeting this evening. And if we get that muted. We did make an attempt to accommodate people online. So we do have people joining us online. This workshop's been designed to accommodate people primarily in person, but we do have people online. We're trying to accommodate folks as best we can joining us from home. So I have a presentation for you that will provide some context for the workshop and for the project. And then as Paul noted, we will go to breakout sessions where we really just want to have conversations with you about the residential zones, residential zoning and housing. We're working on the feedback. We'll get that taken care of here. As part of our presentation, we are going to do an interactive survey. And if you joined us for the last workshop, you should be familiar with it. Given the size of the turnout, and this is an incredible turnout on a summer evening, so thanks for coming out. We only have about 50 survey clickers. So I'll just ask for people that came together to share one. And that way we can spread them around the room. But before we do that, I have a presentation to help explain what this project is and our process and what this evening is designed to do. So first of all, our agenda for this evening, as Paul noted, we have 2 hours and we're going to try to make the best use of your time. We have a fairly brief presentation, about 20 minutes. We'll spend about the same amount of time on the survey, and then we'll go to the breakout groups. So we'll spend at least an hour in discussions. And given the size of our crowd, I think we'll do 3 groups. We'll have one group of roughly 15 people stay in this room. We'll have another group of about 15 people go out into the lobby. And then I've been informed that we have space in the mezzanine for a third group. So I'll be leading a third group up in the mezzanine. And we'll give you more direction when that time comes. And then we'll get you home at a reasonable hour. So we'll conclude by 8:30. Okay. So I briefly introduced myself, but just to explain a little bit more about IMAG and our firm. We are a consulting firm of planners and engineers. Our office is here in Hartford, Connecticut. We have offices across the country, but our local office is in Hartford, and our staff is based out of that office. We've been working with the town for over a year now, about a year and a half, on an update of the town's zoning regulations, which had not been updated in many, many decades. We are now in phase 2 of that process. We've successfully adopted phase 1, which refreshed, updated, reformatted, and corrected a lot of issues with the zoning regulations. We're now in phase 2, and I'll explain that a little bit more in a moment. First, all of the information relevant to our work in this project is available online. There's the link. You don't have to copy it down. Just go to the town's website. There's a page dedicated to zoning update that will provide more detail about the update, the purpose of the update, and materials relevant to our work. The purpose of the update, as I mentioned, your zoning regulations were decades old. They had not kept pace with changing practices and land use, development pressures, changing statutes, case law. They had fallen way behind all of that. So we needed to really get them up to speed with current land use practice, and more importantly, with statutes that have changed considerably, particularly in the last few years. We've done that. We've done that part of it. The second phase is now to open up a dialogue with the community about very intentionally making changes to the zoning regulations if they are needed. And at our prior workshop, we talked about any potential needed changes to better protect the environment and your natural resources. At this workshop this evening, we will talk about any changes that may be necessary to your residential zones, or changes necessary to other zones to better accommodate housing in the community, if needed or as needed. So that's the focus of our workshop this evening, is to talk about housing. As I mentioned earlier, we've been at work now for over a year and a half on your zoning regulations. Phase 1 was adopted in March. So that new set of regulations has been in place and has been working for you as a community for over a couple of months now. Now we're taking a step back and we're looking at these broader issues to consider making changes to your zoning regulations to support your vision for the community. So where we're at in that process, as I mentioned earlier, in June, we conducted a workshop on environmental resources, conservation, sustainability, resilience. There's a summary report of that workshop online. We learned a lot of valuable things that will contribute to our work as part of this phase 2. We're now focused on residential zones and housing. And in September, we will conduct a similar workshop focused on commercial and industrial zones. And then other areas that we are going to tackle include site design, landscaping, parking, signage, plan and permit requirements, and administrative procedures. And we'll likely do, because those are very targeted areas, the commission will likely lead some focus groups for those. So here we are in this process right here. We're in the middle of phase 2, but thus far we're just in the community engagement portion of phase 2, meaning we have not drafted any recommended amendments to your zoning related to these discussions. We are still taking it all in. Once we complete this series of workshops, we're going to get to work with the commission, as we had in phase 1, on making decisions as to how to handle all the feedback we've received and making decisions as to whether or not there are changes necessary to your zoning regulations to respond to the concerns and ideas of the community as a whole. So I want to just do a very brief overview to provide you some context on zoning if you weren't on our last workshop or if you may not be familiar with zoning. Your zoning regulations are part of your municipal ordinance. They control land use and development in the town, and that authority is given to the town by the state of Connecticut. And the state of Connecticut places limits on that authority. It tells the town what it can and cannot do. So your zoning regulations have multiple components. One component is the geographic aspect, and that's your zoning map. And those are regulations and rules and procedures that vary across different areas of town. And the other aspect are the zoning book itself, the regulations, what are commonly referred to as the regulations or the text, the zoning text. We've updated that zoning book. So now it's got a proper format and organization, and it's compliant with what the state requires you to do and limits you to. But we're now going to explore ideas and a discussion about actually changing that text and potentially amending the zoning map if needed or as needed. And I've talked about the town zoning authority. To go into that a little bit more detail, the zoning authority is limited. It allows the town to control what kind of development occurs, where it occurs, the density of that development, the scale of that development, how much off-street parking is required, basic site design, grading, and landscaping standards, soil erosion control standards, stormwater management requirements, and specific regulations surrounding uses, what different types of uses can do, how businesses can conduct their business as related to land use, development form, and activity. So zoning is fairly broad, but it is limited in some sense. So our work is focused on zoning, and there may be some areas that you're interested in that go beyond zoning, that are really policy-based issues or may be controlled through some other municipal ordinance outside of zoning that is created by your Board of Selectmen. Your zoning regulations, your Planning and Zoning Commission has the authority to draft those. And it is an ordinance, but it's a subset of your ordinances. Connecticut General Statutes, as I mentioned, essentially requires that any zoning regulation be designed to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. And it gets much more detailed than that, but that's the basis of any zoning authority. So any amendments made to your zoning need to be checked against that responsibility and that authority, that it's in the best interest of the public health, safety, and general welfare. So what we're going to talk about this evening, and it's not showing up very well on the screen, and the screen's washed out, but as we get to our breakout sessions, we have some very nice maps, and I think you'll be able to see better. But we're going to talk about your residential zones. Most of your town is zoned residential. You do have some commercial zones. You have your C10 zone, your C30. Those are, the C stands for commercial. You have a marine, a waterfront zone. You have an industrial zone. Outside of that, your zones are residential, whether they're rural residential, smaller lot residential, or multifamily residential. So I want to walk you through that. There's your list of zones. So you have several of them. You have 2 rural residential, 3 smaller lot residential, and wherever you see a number next to a couple of letters, the numbers represents the square footage required for a lot. So that's 80,000, 40,000, 20,000, and so forth. 80,000 is just short of 2 acres. 40,000 is a little less than 1 acre. So the RU80 zone, which covers much of your town, is close to a 2 acre minimum. It's what we would call a large lot zone. So the moral of the story here is most of your town, roughly 90% so, that's not an exact calculation, it's a ballpark, is zoned residential. And I'll walk you through those. Your rural residential zones cover most of that. And these, again, are 1 or 2 acre zones. And you are limited within those zones in what can be built. It's limited to single family, community residence, and the state requires that wherever you allow single family, you allow community residence. It's a group home. And the state requires that across the state. Wherever single family is allowed, community residence has to be allowed. But you also allow convalescent and nursing homes, and they do differ a little bit in their licensing, and a planned conservation development, which is a form of subdivision. Those are the only principal or primary uses allowed in your rural residential zone. So it's very limited. And I think it's what you would expect. It's what you see around you. It's mostly single family homes. And this is what your RU80 looks like. A lot of very narrow rural roads with homes located on fairly large lots, many of them set back from the road. And there are a lot of roads in town that look just like this. The RU40 looks very similar. You would have a hard time telling the difference between the two zones if you're driving down the road. But as we get to your residence districts, which are your smaller lot zones, there's a higher density development. And the residential neighborhoods around here are your residence districts. These are zones that require only half an acre or less. And those are more scattered. I know it's hard to see here, but they're very scattered. There's not many of them, and they don't represent a huge amount of area. The R20, that's, believe it or not, that's a home. So what you see is the homes are a little closer to the road, and they're a little closer to each other. The R15 as well, the homes you'll notice are much closer to the road. So as we go down in number, we have smaller lots, and the homes are closer to the road and closer to each other. And the R10, we see a lot of R10 zones near the shore, where we have smaller homes, smaller lots, and closer to each other. They do have a variety of neighborhood types and zoning districts that enable those neighborhoods to differ in their character. You do have multifamily residence districts as well, but there are very few. There's a handful of them. They're limited, and there are very few developments within those zones as well. But they do allow single family, two family, community residence, convalescent, nursing homes. So all the uses that are allowed in your other residential zones are allowed in these zones, but they differ because they allow for multifamily development. Hence the name MFR, multifamily residential. You have a couple of different types of zones, MFR 40, MFR 20, and MFR 80 as well. So there are 3 in total. And here's an example from the MFR 80, MFR 40, and MFR 20. Again, I just showed you probably half of the developments that you do have that are multifamily in the town. Okay, so that's some context for you. Now we're going to go to the interactive survey. I find people like this tool. They like this exercise. Sometimes it can be a little technically challenging when we've got big attendance like this. But again, we are going to distribute little clickers to you, and Rory and Tony are starting to distribute them. Given our turnout, not everyone is going to be able to have a clicker. Unfortunately, we only have 50. Again, if you came with someone, please share. Please share. This survey is not scientific, right? We are not going to make any decisions based upon the results from this exercise. This exercise is intended to get you thinking about housing and your residential zoning. It's intended to provide us with an understanding of where you're coming from and what your thoughts are. And it's really just intended to prime the pump for our breakout session discussion. We are going to report all the results, and it'll be part of our report from this evening, but we're not going to be making any policy decisions based upon the results of this survey. And I see a question in the back of the room. Go ahead.
I think there's some little question on how you share liquors. Like if each one person has a liquor and they.
You have to agree with each other on the response. You're going to have to, whoever you came with, you're going to have to discuss with the person you came with as to how to respond. Okay? Yes.
So just singly, and you have too many singles, they've got to work out their answer with their neighbors, and even though they don't.
No, we're gonna try to make sure that everyone that came by themselves gets it quick. We're gonna do our best. We didn't anticipate this turnout. We had about 30 people at our last workshop. So this is great. This is a good problem to have. Again, this is just an exercise.
You may have more residents for the next meeting, if we're starting to pay for it.
Well, good, good, good.
Just a heads up.
Thank you.
Where's that signage? I'll make sure he's down.
The sign, we've got a sign in the sheet that's passing around too.
Oh, and Francisco, I want to make a note, the affiliation is if you're a resident or a homeowner or a member.
Yeah.
It's not political. affiliation.
Yeah,
Seems to be something.
we're not concerned about that.
A lot of affiliations and that makes sense.
Yeah, it was just, your, I learned, or your
Okay.
connection to online.
All right, let me apologize now if there's someone that came by themselves that does not have a clicker.
If there's anybody who's willing to share a clicker, potentially,
Or is anyone comfortable if we're going the exercise? Yeah, this is, again, it's just an exercise. It's intended to get you thinking. We do have an online survey. We do have an online survey that asks almost the exact same questions. And that survey, we're gonna look to heavily. We're gonna place a lot of weight on that survey because we've had over 600 people participate in that survey. We want to get that number even higher. So if for some reason you didn't get a chance to fully participate in this interactive survey, please take the online survey. It asks the same questions, asks more questions, more and more detailed questions. Okay. Yes, sir.
Where is that survey available?
There's a link on the town website. Right on zoning, and I think
On the main page
on the
too.
main page as well. Okay. How this works. We're gonna move through this quickly, right? Again, it's just an exercise. The only buttons you need to concern yourselves with are these numbered buttons up here. I don't know what these do. All you have to do is press a number that corresponds with your choice. And I'll walk you through that. We'll have a test slide to make sure this works. Okay, so the test slide is, if you live in Old Lyme, we may have people that don't live here. If you live in Old Lyme, how long have you lived here? And I'll read these in case you have trouble in the back of the room. 1 is 0 to 5 years. You lived here 0 to 5 years. 2, 6 to 10, 3, 11 to 20, 4, more than 20, and 5, you don't live in Old Lyme. So again, how long have you lived here? 1, 0 to 5, 2, 6 to 10, 3, 11 to 20, 4, more than 20 years, 5, you don't live here. Just press the button.
If you're not a resident, should we take the survey?
Sure, but I would ask if you're not a resident, I would ask you to kindly, if there are people that did not get a clicker, to kindly surrender a clicker to a resident. Okay?
Francisco,
So all you have to do is press a number. If you change your mind and you hit the wrong button, you press the right one, it'll cancel out your first entry. Yeah, you don't have to push enter or anything. So let's find out if this is working. It's working. 60% of you have lived here for more than 20 years. So we have a very invested group, but we do have representation from folks that have lived here for various range. So welcome everyone. All right. First question, first substantive question. Do the existing zoning regulations, to the best of your knowledge, do the existing zoning regulations adequately and appropriately regulate development in the town's residential zones or districts, if you want to call it? 1, yes. 2, no. 3, not sure. And you may not be familiar enough with the zoning regulations to answer this, and that's okay. Just click not sure. And again, you don't have to have intimate knowledge. You could just look around and feel that I think we're doing a good job of regulating land use and development in our residential zones, or I don't think we're doing a good job. And the implications are that your zoning regulations are either working or not working. Okay, let's find out. And again, 1 yes, 2 no, and this will be the pattern. 1 yes, 2 no, 3 not sure. All right, okay, half of you, no, and then we're split. Okay, that's good. That's good for us to know. That's not necessarily good, but good for us to know and suggests that we have work to do. Does Old Lyme need more housing? 1, yes. 2, no. 3, not sure. And I know we're not asking about what types of housing, just number of dwelling units. Do you need more dwelling units? We can get into the specifics in our breakout discussions. 1 yes, 2 no, 3 not sure. Evenly split. Oh, wow. You folks are going to be at work. Okay. All right. Does Old Lyme need to allow for a greater diversity of housing types? Right. So single family, small and larger single families, small and larger lot properties, 2-family, maybe multifamily, condos versus townhouses across the board. Do you need a greater diversity of homes? You're primarily a single family dwelling community. 1 yes, 2 no, 3 not sure. Yes, interesting. A little more skewing to yes than no, but 42% no. Does Old Lyme need more housing for seniors, such as age-restricted housing and assisted living communities? Age-restricted is 55 plus type neighborhoods. And you know what assisted living are, nursing homes and that, and other various levels of assisted living. So do you need more of those types of facilities? 1 yes, 2 no, 3 not sure. Okay. Yes, tracking similar to the prior response, but even a little more yes. Okay. Should a higher density of housing be permitted in areas where infrastructure can support it? So in areas where the roads and there's water supply and maybe sewer or the soils are adequate for septic. In areas where the land and the infrastructure can support it, should higher density housing be allowed or considered? 1 yes, 2 no, 3 not sure. Very evenly split on this too. Okay, there's consistency here, which is good. It makes things a little more clear to us. Should the development of housing in coastal areas be more restricted? Now, any housing in the coastal area management zone has to go to site plan review for deep, and now even single family homes have to go to deep for coastal site plan review. And there are obviously flood hazard area restrictions. So there are a lot of restrictions in place. I think our question for you is, do you feel like things should even be stricter with respect to the type of development or the scale or amount of development that is allowed in coastal areas? 1 yes, 2 no, 3 not sure. And if you were at the earlier workshop here, I'm sure this ties in directly with some of the conversations that were had earlier today for the resiliency workshop. Okay, even this is our strongest yes response. Two thirds yes. Okay. Should the regulations be changed to allow for the development of more accessory dwelling units? You do allow accessory dwelling units. That's a small unit built on your property. But the regulations are, you know, there are some restrictions, so they're not incredibly permissive. Very few accessory dwelling units have been built. Does the town need more? Should you change the regulation to make it more permissive to allow more? 1, yes. 2, no. 3, not sure. And I realize there's a lot of conditions surrounding that, but just broadly speaking, what's your gut feeling on it? Oh, interesting. That we keep climbing in response. 69%. Yes. Okay. That's good to know. We're almost done with these types of questions. Should more housing be built as mixed use developments? Now, for some context, you may have heard of Connecticut Public Act 25-1. It requires now that every town allow mixed use development or multifamily in their commercial zones, up to 9 units per lot. So the town has now amended their zoning regulations. They're now currently effective that allow up to 9 units of mixed use development, which is residential units with a commercial use, are now allowed in your commercial zones as required by the state, as mandated by the state. The question is that something you support? The state didn't give us any choice in that, but is that something you support? More housing in the form of mixed use development, mixed with commercial, either in the same building or on the same lot. 1, yes. 2, no. 3, not sure. All right, we have more work to do on it. 53% no. So I realize there's a lot to dig into that. So let's talk about that at our breakout sessions. Should the town allow multifamily residential to be built in more places? Again, you have a handful of MFR zones with only a few developments in those zones. Should you allow more areas to be zoned for this or amend the regulations to make it easier for multifamily to be built? 1, yes. 2, no. 3, not sure. Okay, no. So strongly no, but 39% yes. Okay. All right. The next part of this is visual, and you folks in the back room, I know it's going to be a little more difficult for you. Again, this is just an exercise. We want to get your gut reaction on images of housing that we're going to show you. We've got about 15 images. And my question to you is, as you look at these images that we show you, do you feel like what you see would be appropriate in Old Lyme? In some cases, I'll show you images of houses that you may think they're actually pictures here from Old Lyme. These are stock photos that we use. So in some cases, it'll likely be yes, because you already have those types of homes. I think what I'd like you to think about in the case of the types of homes and buildings you already have is, do you think you need more of those? Would you be comfortable with seeing more of those built? In the case of buildings or homes that you don't see in town, are you receptive to seeing something like that in town? Is there a place for it in town? Is this the right town for it? So that's how I'd like you to approach these. Now, this won't be a yes or no exercise. This is going to be a scale, 1 to 5. This is like the star rating system, 1 to 5 stars. 1 is lowest rating. No, 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 no. 5 is, yeah, absolutely. I like it. 3, obviously in the middle. 2, we've got a range. So again, we want just your visceral response to the images that we show you. Don't concern yourself too much about, well, is that actually a 2-family, or is that a single family, or is that a multifamily? Just look at the scale, the form, the design, the setting of the picture. I've got 15 pictures. We'll go through them quickly. First one. Again, 1, not good. 5, you really like it. I'm sure you have, this picture may have very well been taken in Old Lyme. I don't know. Again, all right, you have this now. Would you like, are you comfortable seeing more of this? 1, no. 5, yes, you like it. All right. Okay. see what you think. Okay, that does, I don't think that surprises anyone in the room, right? It's gonna get harder from here. Again, maybe given the previous slide, I think I know what to expect. Sometimes we show you very similar images and maybe there's something that you respond to in one picture that you don't respond to another. So we'll show you a little bit of variety just for the sake of trying to understand where you're coming from. So again, 1, you don't like it. 5, you really like it. And there's a place for it, for more of this in Old Lyme. Okay, very consistent, as you would expect. Okay, how about that? And I apologize, it's a little washed out, but.
See it on the public monitor.
Yeah, it's better on, I know some of you can see it on that monitor. The sky's really blue, by the way. Okay, well, much bigger range here. That does look like homes along the shore, like. How about that? You could probably tell that's an accessory dwelling unit, right? Or it could be a tiny home. It could be a tiny home too. This could be the principal unit. All right, so we're shifting to no here. We're shifting to no, and maybe that is just too modern, or who knows? Those are manufactured homes, but it's very tastefully done. I think you would at least agree to that, right?
What is that?
We're just gonna have to keep going. If you have any questions when we're done, feel free to ask us. No. Okay.
Shocking.
Oh, yeah, I mean, right, yeah, oh, no. Not currently. In case you can't tell, it's the parking underneath, the first floor is up here. This is very obviously a coastal flood hazard zone, right? And I realize there's a number of things you could be responding to here, right? It's that these homes are sandwiched right next to each other. It's also that, the way they're elevated and the way that's been handled may be an issue. And we could dig into all these things in the breakout session. There's 2 front doors, one there and one there. Okay, I'm seeing some consistency now. We've shifted right far to the left. Okay, but not everyone. That's only 51%, right? We do have a diversity of opinions here. And you'll notice I'm turning up the temperature as we go, okay? Okay, all right. It'd be interesting to compare these two because they're both duplexes. So we'll have to kind of read into that. Yeah, again, it's a little washed out. These are duplexes, and they are, are on smaller lots. They're obviously very close, very small setback, tiny setback. So it does suggest at the density, but you'll notice, it's nice lighting and sidewalks and trees. So it's nicely done. Okay, that's very strong. It's 2/3 no. How about that one? Now, these are single family homes, which you have and you liked when we started. I think I'm understanding it's the density that's the issue, right? It just doesn't look like Old Lyme. That's the issue. Okay. Okay. Again, right, 57%, but we've got distribution of, we do have distribution of opinions. You notice all these images I show you, I mean, these properties are well cared for, they're well maintained, they're fairly nicely constructed, so that's not the issue. And these are townhouses, so they're all next to each other, they're not spaced at all. And, you know, they're obviously oriented to some sort of courtyard or something like that. All right. And that is a residential property. I know it could looks like it could be an office building. You know, as to whether or not it's a bunch of apartments or how it's organized, I think the scale, I'd like you to consider the scale of it. All right, so you don't think it. How about this one? I'll go quick on this one. I think you've made up your mind. Yeah, I thought, yeah, wow, this one, you really don't like that.
We don't want to be Brantford.
Oh, okay. I know exactly what you're referring to. And that's washed out, but this is one big home where there are definitely multiple units on it, and there are other homes, and it looks like there's actually a diversity. There's some maybe smaller single-family homes, so we've got a mixture all kind of tucked in very close. The sidewalk's right there, so we're obviously, you know, higher density. All right, 2/3 no. And we've got, I think, only two more with this second to last, I believe. And if this helps you, this is a 55+ condo building in West Hartford with very pricey units. I think maybe 15 or 20 of them. It's designed by an architect. Okay, more than 2/3 no. So even though this is kind of pricey, it looks like the issue here is the scale, right? Okay. And this is the last one. Wow, you're laughing. Excuse me, they're very proud of this in Brookfield. They're very proud of this in Brookfield. This was a tremendous accomplishment. And in their town center,
Yes.
All right. We heard you. Okay. We're going to collect the clicker sound. Please hand them to Tony and Rory. It will not unlock the car. Okay. So. I need about 15 to 20 people on this side of the room. This front 2/3 of the room. Just to stay here. You got it. You get to stay here. I need this chunk of the room, this side, right here, this front 2/3 or so, to follow me upstairs to the mezzanine. And there are chairs up there, and I'm gonna follow you up there. We're gonna take a couple minutes. If you want to get some water, go to the bathroom. It's gonna be a few minutes till we get set up and get going. For you folks on both sides in the back, the very back, the last 3 or so rows, 15 to 20 of you, please go out into the lobby. We're going to do a session lobby. We did 2 sessions in this room last time, and it was tough. The acoustics were really tough. So we're going to do one here, the back on both sides, the back 3 or 4 rows on both sides will be in this lobby here. And you can bring your chairs with you. And then this front 2/3 of this side, you're upstairs with me. We have 1 hour and we'll guarantee you, we have 1 hour, 1 hour. Oh, I know Dan, I know Dan. I do it. I don't do anything with that. You know, people in other communities can snicker. Yes. Soil that. We have sections. Okay. Now, you would see what. There's also, but they have also this.
Or do I start?
Yeah.
This is it, yeah. But are you talking timer?
Yeah.
It should just go. It should just go.
I grew up.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. We're excited to hear from you all. Hence the structure of the meeting. So I'm here to take notes. I will ask sort of prompting questions and I know the answers. Or maybe I might know your line of thinking. But if I just say a little bit, so, you know, the back of the group, we're all kind of digging in, so to speak. All right, my name is Tony. Yes,
I mean, we're looking at a bunch of that, and I'm wondering if we could create a.
I think that would be a fantastic way. Yeah, people comfortable orienting themselves. All right, I love it. Yeah. Or email it, or- Yeah, we are.
Who starts the meeting? You got
I gotta
Let the board-
go.
the first.
Here we go. I don't see her well, but here's.
We were in the middle.
All right, so. The idea here is that we're trying to craft a vision for the residential. We're gonna ask some questions to help us get there. So, what is your vision for the residential areas in Old Lyme for the future? How does it differ or not differ from what you see today? I don't know. Okay, okay, perfect. That was the thing that I was getting from our earlier survey or exercise. Okay, so the preference for no chambers. Whether it's realistic or not, that's different. Okay. Can I ask? What is it that you like about it now that you want to preserve and not to be much? The wooded feel. Okay. So, trees, lots of trees. Those fertile, quiet, plants. Rural, quiet. Tea and rural, quiet and quaint. Okay. All right. Yes,
I think I see it, saying for more multi-family houses
the need for more multifamily.
for affordability.
Okay, so. And I will say that this second half of this discussion will bring up a map. And for comments like that, we would plan to where that can make it appropriate. In your opinion. Okay, so multifamily housing for affordability. And when you say multifamily, what do you think of when you say that? Is it?
I think, something typically between 2 and 6 dwelling units.
Okay,
And the state has made proposals. For the town to consider things like a transit oriented community.
mhm,
I think that should be a consideration of the zoning committee. A transit oriented community, we define a particular area. Such as. I think the polish.
Okay.
Housing. And. Somebody please go to. The use of the availability of housing. I think it's an important issue. I think more houses will be available. And we should encourage it.
okay. And I will say, and Francisco had mentioned this earlier, the zoning was recently changed in 5 of the states. Requires that multifamily, mixed use, residential be permitted in commercial districts, so. That is a change that has to be made.
In April,
Yes.
town is most.
Yes.
Mixed use. The problem with this is they allow mixed use in certain commercial zones. The concrete was, the first floor has to be commercial.
Yes.
So that makes the commercial zoning that we're talking about, upgrade the area, those commercial zones are like they're cherry stones.
Yes.
And Golden Range, and that area along Route 156. For someone to put commercial on the first floor in that area would make the project unusable.
That
You know, if you allow local family, if you made that one of the transit, you can have the transit district there also, you could actually do that local transit. But that would be a consideration, because you basically, you made mixed use available in those areas, but from watching businesses in that area, it's very hard to put commercial on the list.
Okay, all right, so I think I captured that. So in the commercial districts where the state has required that you provide for mixed use residential, you would like to explore, consider just multifamily, no requirement of commercial on the first.
There would be certain requirements of multi-family.
Yes, yes, it's,
That's what I'm saying, you might want to consider, state is advocating as a transit oriented community.
yeah,
When you would define where that community exists. You would find, here's a location, like Coles Road would be good. The Southwood District might be another place. We're right next to the old line police station, we now have the transit bus stop
okay,
connecting the railroad stations. So that would be a good location for something like that. Well, at least you should consider it, bring
okay.
do a study.
Yeah, so I've added that, and then when we get to maps, like you can mark up where you think those locations would be appropriate on the map. Thank you.
I'm just curious if you're willing, what your vision, we're talking about vision, just kind of seeing what is our vision for that versus what needs to actually be changed first. So what do you envision a transportation hub or center for? What does that look like? What are the qualities that you're seeing in terms of the vision for us to move toward that? I wish.
So. Let's use all these progress. And there, I also think the salary. If someone was to build right now, let's say on the mixed use, you have to have that commercial component on the first floor. But if you allow this multi-family or a transit, you said that's a transit area. It would allow someone to build a multi-family home there or a townhouse there. So it would be multi-family, of course, can take different types of construction, but it would allow that use.
Explain what you mean by transit
If
area?
you did this, right now the state is offering incentives for towns to do it.
Raise,
So-
stop being up to.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious, and other people, if you have a vision that aligns with that or wants to add to it, I just am trying to get a sense of how you see that in the vision of the old line as a
In
whole.
that vision, I see the state providing funds for sewer system in the soundproof area. Because part of the benefit of putting forth this transit oriented community is that the state will look at how we can fund things like pursuits. And should probably know most of the beach communities are moving towards sewer systems, but that has not been in the sound.
I'd like to see less restrictions for existing homeowners. For example, they should be allowed to build an accessory dwelling unit, consistent with health and safety. You have a 4,000, 5,000 square foot home, maybe you could section off part of that and have that be a, in-law apartment or another, or rental unit that would, continue the existing character of the neighborhood and yet allow for the creation of more housing.
So you're talking specifically about, like accessory dwelling units, so like they're next to the primary resident, you're not talking about like dividing lots, like subdividing lots.
I'm talking about both. So
Both,
if I'm
okay.
owner, I have a house, 2 acres.
Yeah.
I'm build a little in-law dwelling and
Yeah.
I don't have much, my income is limited. Maybe I want to split my big house into two because the majority of line are 3 and 4 bedroom houses with 2 people living in them.
Okay,
And it's just a mismatch of opportunity.
yeah, understood, but you were not talking about splitting lots, you're talking about like maybe in your home creating
Well,
another.
that's a consideration too.
Okay, okay,
And if you have 5 acres, 4 acres, 3 acres, maybe you'd like to split your lot. But, you know, that would need to be permitted under, you know, the zoning regulations, which probably isn't,
right.
I mean, right now, creating a subdivision is onerous.
So I'm gonna, so I have that down and I'm going to, so the ADA, less restrictive for homeowners, ADA permitted, whether it's detached or within an existing building. And then, I feel like what you're suggesting is smaller lot sizes, like permitting smaller lot sizes, because if then you were large, you could potentially divide a parcel, but not, you know, right out of their limitation about doing that. Minimum lot
It's not
size.
existing, existing resources.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't match by the existing resource that is there, when it comes to drastic changes, but
Right.
starting small and.
And obviously you couldn't pop off a smaller lot if the zoning didn't permit
Right,
that.
right. But I think that's what we're here trying to figure out, is the zoning working, is it not? It's that's, like, what would you want to see, and then how would zoning change to enable that vision? Thank you.
I think the town needs, smaller scale housing for 2 classes of people. And it needs it in a big way. The first is older people who are looking to downsize from their 3 or 4 bedroom house. Their friends are here, they've lived here their whole life. They don't want to have to move to nest egg or save or something like that. They'd like to get a nice place. They've got money. They'd like to get a nice place that's small. And they're just, and frankly, they'd probably like it to be near town. And they'd like it to be walkable to something that's worth walking to, not, you know, hidden out in the woods so that nobody else has to look at. Something that was nice, something that was near town. That's one group of people, there's a tremendous commitment. Okay, if that demand was satisfied, if a lot of those people could stay in town and move out of their big houses, other people could move in, have families. And that's the other group that's not really being served, is people who, I'm sort of skipping a step, is people who are starting families, people who are younger. The town really needs people like that. The town has got twice the national average, people over 55. And it doesn't have nearly the number of people in the middle of their life who are physically fit and able to do the jobs of our all volunteer fire department and other community organizations. So we need, if the town as a whole is to have a vibrant life, it needs to have accommodation for younger people. One way to get some of that accommodation is to move the older people into something smaller scale, because what they want anyway. So I know a lot of people are against change, but the idea, my idea is allow certain kinds of changes so that the town remains viable. I can say this.
Hi, I don't know this gentleman, but he's, speak about it. I own 38 acres. But I'm trying to do multifamily, and I'm also trying to do as apartment buildings, but also with townhouses for exactly that. People that want to downsize. I'm one of them. I'm 65. I'm a senior. It's like, you know, it's the whole idea. I don't need my big house anymore. I want to go into something smaller, beautiful, nice, something that it's on the other side of town. It's 5.5 miles from here. It's off of 4 Mile River Road. But there's only 24 units I'm allowed to do in your current zoning regulations. And that is I can't pay for the infrastructure. A town road is excessively expensive compared to like my private road that I live on early on the other side of town here. It's was done in the 60s. It's not in code or whatever like that, but it's to build roads and the infrastructure is incredibly difficult and economically impossible to do redevelopment. You need to have more units to amortize. And the other thing that people haven't really think about is, I don't know if everybody knows it, electric vote is hiring and transferring 4,000 to 5,000 people to the Crystal Mall location being renovated and changed. Where are these people gonna live? They haven't figured that out. I've talked to the electric vote people, and they want. These are people with security clearances and well paid. They have nowhere to live.
So without getting into specifics of your property, is it fair to say that you would like to see increase increased density?
Increased density, 100%.
Support viability of housing development, but
Apartments and, for sale units, yeah, but the townhouse condo,
support, okay.
but I'm only allowed to do 24.
What you're describing is a suburb.
Well, it's on 38 acres, that's up on flat field and you can't even see from the road, so it's like, what do you know over there? Unique spot, difficult to build.
I think a related issue is affordability. And the issue with affordability is twofold. One, there's not that many houses and they're expensive. And two, the lack of houses. I mean, Niantic is clearly the opposite extreme from Old
Yeah.
But realistically, when you look at the tax rate in Old you're paying an awful lot more in taxes here than you would in a town where there were more residences to share the taxes. So it's a function of, do you want to keep people out and pay higher taxes, or is there a middle ground that said that a few more people in certain places will bring those rates down generally across the town?
Okay. And I,
Also, one of the things I think we do not need in this town are more single family, 4-bedroom housing. Yeah, I mean, I know that's obvious to most of us, but I think it's. I don't think, you know, the stuff on Button Ball Road that's just been built, this destroyed the entire forest of big giant houses. Because that's what developers are gonna make a lot of money on, because I understand the needs of big product when you're developing, but the need to have housing set up as community visions is another big piece of this, which is wherever we can put it in multifamily, it should be set up already so that people can have their ownership. I mean, we have a shopping center where people drive from one place to the other. They never walk around, they never see each other. So those are those things, where we can walk down one street and not have anywhere to go. So there's a need to somehow mix that.
Thank you. Also supporting a little more density allows the businesses to survive. Right now, they're barely making it and presenting this. It's nice to have shops. They need people. So I take a little more density supports business.
is not the direction of this conversation. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just curious and appreciate everyone's thoughts and comments, and there just seems to be a lot of assumption too, and I'm curious, like, we use yours as an example. Is it that the businesses aren't surviving, or are we not supporting, are we not willing to spend our money there? I mean, that's how I work outside of line a lot of, just casual conversations with my clients are talking to me. That's their impression of Old Lyme, and like, people still want to spend their money.
Anyway, I can't speak to that. I'm not gonna speak to that.
But it's just interesting to just ask that question and be like, what is that our part? And back to what Edie was saying, it's like, we're trying to solve problems right now. And I'm just curious back to your original question of the vision of like, what are our strengths here? Are we even grounded in what our strengths are in Old Lyme? And then seeing, okay, where are the gaps and how can we mobilize those? Because just Lacey, I lived in Portland, Oregon for a long time. And at the Blue Book, when they were doing commercial on the bottom and, living on up top, and it was great. And then everything was empty. And it wasn't so great. There wasn't a community. There wasn't things. So I'm just curious around the assumption that like, if you just build it, is that going to create community? Are those the value? Like, what are our values that we are trying to create? And then what part of these things with zoning do we keep going towards? And I feel like that's not clear. Like that, we as a group are not clear on some of those things, and those aren't being presented in context for some of these things. So I guess I'm just curious. It probably is also my own preference, but I'm curious what people feel like our strengths are in alignment. What do we want? What do we want to build off of our strengths versus always identifying the weakness first, or what absolutely needs to change? Because I think that is the quality of Old Lyme, and it has so much strength here that gets washed out by just trying to jump to solving the problem really quickly without knowing our assumption and without knowing what our true strengths are. So I'm curious. I agree with you. We moved here, we find it, the rural part of it really nice and quaint. I also, again, my background in Portland, Oregon too, and I love being in a city. So I go both ways, but I do think there's some strength to being the only rural zip code still left on the 95 corridor. And the benefits to that, our neighbors, their kids got to apply to college using that, and they were able to go to college and get some help with some of that too. So there's all these other benefits with that as well. I do enjoy a walkable community. My business is in health and wellness, and I love to be able to walk around the community and do those businesses. So those are some of mine. I'm just really curious what other people really find as our strengths in Old Lyme.
Well, I agree with the treatments and the rural, and I just don't think it's either or. And like you were saying, and when you show us the map, maybe we'll understand that, but there might be neighborhoods that could be denser and have, because I then understood there's so many volunteers there. I'm able to do it. But I do agree, we are getting older, and we need more and more people.
Joe, and was street.
Yeah, I was thinking this, I see that 3, 4, and 5 are all sort of the same thing. Some more affordable housing. I know there's a lot of residents who've lived here a long time, and they can't afford to stay. The taxes for their house is too big. They love to have an in-law suite for their kids to live in, or live in a homemade, or even rent part of their house. They're not subdividing the land, they're not really getting more use, and there's no combination.
Yeah.
You can't have them, if you have a house that's called a guest house. Our parents, we like to have them live with us, and we can't do it all the time. So slight loosening the restrictions keep people who live there their whole lives and can stay in either an existing house or have family members. Can't do that.
Okay. And I didn't write that down. I'm just kind of circling it.
But it's really whatever they're saying.
Yeah, they're on here, right? I appreciate that.
Could you just maximize existing sources?
Okay. And you posted questions to the group. I'm gonna grab the series of questions there. But if you post that question, so if anyone wants to just take a moment now to say, answer that, I think that would be great, and I will be right back.
I would say before let's. Yeah. So we're on top. Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So we're just gonna continue on. And questions, but, did I miss anything about the values? I think the board, I think just kind of translate input. What I'm hearing into sort of what you're playing with your framework, regular affordability and inclusivity are like sentiments that have been shared at least for like 3, 4, and 5. Making the community affordable so that people can stay or younger families specifically. And I think that's just.
What is considered affordable?
That's,
Hello? We have online participation?
Yes, you have a lot. What is considered, what does this group consider affordable?
A question for the group.
But isn't it based on what the median income is? It's not something we can decide on.
When, yeah, I mean, when you, yeah, I mean, well, that's not entirely true. I mean, yes, they do establish it by that, but it could be like 20% of median income. And you could do, like in Boston, they'll have a community that might be incredibly low income, but they'll set 20% of median income for the metro Boston area. So there's I mean, it's, I don't, yeah, so I'm just saying, but I mean, as an example, like it isn't, you can kind of, it's not encouraged to play with the numbers in some ways. So, but I think I'll ask this of the group. I mean, when we say affordable, it's not necessarily set aside as affordable. I think we're also talking about a diversity of housing types.
Right.
Some of them more affordable relative to a large home on a single thing, a large single family home.
yeah, there's affordable by covenant.
Yeah.
Talking about median, relative to median income, and then I think people are also interested in the case that are sort of affordable in fact. Relative to bigger house. And the state is only making mandates about affordability by covenant. It's kind of like affordable, right?
Start with the last part you said, the state is only making that they.
The state's mandated things in terms of covenants and affordability, and it's described in terms of percentage of the median income and location.
That is set by state law.
Right, that's the state, that's what I'm saying.
It doesn't vary by town, but it by, whatever, what is COG standing for, whatever the.
It's
Whatever-
the council of governments.
Right, whatever the cog is.
River College,
State.
So, you know, it's also just basic common use of the word affordability, just housing stock, different types of housing. I mean, you have a 4,000 square foot house and the tax is for 10,000. You know, a rent of 3,000 or 4,000 starts to look pretty good. You know, maintenance, you pay your rent. So affordable doesn't necessarily mean what the state determines affordability to be. It's certainly. And even according to the state standards, it's not super cheap. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
3 building apartment is still gonna cost you $3,000.
My question. Joe Cables. This just this. How many people right now? We have just invented a zoning to allow mixed use in commercial zones in this town. So I'm going to look at just one particular area. So let's say we went from, let's say, Remington to where Cherry Stones used to be. Restaurant, everyone paid for that, Cherry Stones was. And you went down east of there, all the way to the old line, by the police department. Right, so they just recently installed a new bus stop. So in that area, we've now allowed for mixed use. But we also, I think, we realize that mixed use requiring commercial on the first floor would never work in a place like a Cherry Center. So those not going to do retail. Okay, but how many people can see some type of multi-family and construction, whether it's townhouses or some other form? You know, in that particular commercial. People would say yes.
I'd like to know what the density would be, though. I mean, I would like to know what density would be. Well, I don't mind the. Next year, you know, single family, diversity housing, but. I saw a plan, I think there is a plan for that area. For Sherstone. Yeah, I saw them, I don't know.
Someone made a proposition for 150 homes there. I don't think that's.
Well, that's what I mean. That seems like a lot.
Feasibility.
Yeah, so.
There's a great deal of property and land behind it between Shore Road and the railroad tracks. There's quite a bit of property. And that's why I was using the term define the transit oriented community. Define it is to say that area. And when you define that community, you could define allowed use within it. And so you can sort of somewhat control perhaps what to some degree gets built in there, but it also will become something that may attract someone to go do it, because we have to attract some developer to do that kind of thing. But I'm sure, yeah, I think it's charters.
Yeah.
Saying that would be okay.
So I think just for the benefit of the group, yeah, please, do you want to jump in?
The state law provides that towns must accelerate or favor or accelerated permitting for up to 9 units of either housing or mixed use housing and commercial in existing commercial zones, right? The state law says one or the other or both. It's not right in old line. The zoning commission has been to meet the requirement of the state law by July 1st. Did amend the existing zoning regulations in order to provide that accelerated permitting in the case of mixed use in commercial areas, but not just housing. Whether the state law actually requires both to be allowed or not, I think is something that people still are not totally agreed upon. But old line could come back and do both under the state law, whether it's required to do that or not. I think people might disagree about that. Right. But that is the issue you're raising, whether ultimately the state law should be interpreted to require accelerated permitting. Or either entirely ground floor and upward all housing or just mixed use housing.
And I did note that there's a preference for that interpretation in order to be housing and mixed use. But thank you, that was helpful.
So with this increased density in whatever areas, what does that do to the volunteer fire department? How are services addressed? How is the school handling more children? You know, can the town, the infrastructure handle that additional population?
So services and infrastructure or
Both.
okay.
Right.
The taxes go up again.
Well, the story is that they would go down if there were more population.
My understanding is that involvement in our schools is equal.
Right, they're looking for students outside
That's
of the
because
town.
we don't have, and as we had problems with the fire department volunteers because we don't have young families. I mean, this is, we have to trust those issues. Part of it is true.
As a member of the fire service community, I will just say that recruitment is down for volunteer fire departments across the shoreline, across the state. So that is a problem that actually expands beyond young families. And yes, we did have to expand upon our schools due to population increase. So families in town is not necessarily the issue there, but I do agree that the volunteer fire department will struggle if we add more. And I think we should be prepared to look into it, not into it becoming no longer a volunteer organization, because that's the way the tides are turning.
And so I just want to translate this to people in the room. So the idea is that for what was the issue? I'm so sorry that there's.
The statement was made that younger families coming in will help the fire service.
Yep. And you're disagreeing with that. You think it needs to be shifted to a full-time or
No, I'm saying that recruitment is down for volunteer fire.
Okay.
Sorry, I keep getting muted. Additionally, I'm sorry, I guess the chat keeps muting me, but
Yes, so what we had said that people could listen in remotely, but for comments, we're not taking comments remotely. And that, people were asked if they could listen in because there was multiple rooms, but it's very hard for the moderator to do this because we have 3 different rooms going on. So we've let folks know that if you're online, it's a listen only, it's not to be able to comment. And that's why it keeps clicking in. So we're sorry for that.
Why are we listening to this?
Yeah.
Why don't we talk over it? It has nothing to do with us. But a general comment. One very tangible, very easy thing that can be done to enhance the population and et cetera, is to allow accessory dwelling units in the larger zones in the town. Many towns have done that. You got a picture one there before, but they're now basically prohibited this time.
Well, I don't know if someone knows more about it, but this year in the state legislature, I don't remember if the House or the Senate did pass a bill that really expanded that kind of thing. And it was shocking because it was totally bipartisan, overwhelmingly supported. But then I think it was in the Senate and it didn't come to a vote. And so it's out there and it will come up this year. We should all pay attention. I don't know the particulars, but it was very exciting because it was really allowing the town ultimately still has the permitting authority. But
There are clearly things that the town zoning commission can do on their own to deal with every one of the issues that have been raised here. The town, for the most part, has been trying to dodge whatever restrictions the state is trying to put on because they don't want to do anything.
Eric told me that Oakland has the most restrictive ADU regulations in the state.
No doubt about it.
Yeah. So I mean that there's definitely ways to
And
relax some of those.
And we should be looking at the state to change the thing. I mean, they're going on little pieces as best they can, and there's a little success. You can do all of the changes you want to do in this town with the town zoning people. It's all within our hands to do. We don't have to deal with, what we're doing is, what can we do to avoid what the state wants us to do? Nobody's saying, what can we do to enhance the population of the town, to bring down the mill rates, to make it a more vibrant community rather than one that's probably the average age is higher than almost any town in the state. And I'm tired.
Hi,
I'm on the planning commission,
Okay,
so I've been kind of advised and I'm more interested in listening.
yes.
And I'm relatively new member of the planning commission and discovered we don't do any planning. And probably didn't do any planning in years other than, right, conservation and development. And that's partly because, I'm not saying it's partly because we're a small town, we don't have enough volunteers to serve on all the boards and commissions. That's another issue, but if you're really interested in preserving the way the town looks, in my opinion, what you need to do is set aside more open space. We only have 900 acres protected through the town and another 900,000. So the open space, the land trust. Okay, they really want the rural look to the town, they sort of figure out a way to preserve open space and allow reasonable amounts of development. And there are we have some ability to do that through zoning, through conservation zones. Where if we do not, there seems to be a lot of interest in doing nothing. Every lot will be developed to whatever the zone is. So there'll be a house, big house, and the 2 acre lots. All 1 acre lots will have a house. Everything will have a house. If you do a build up, we don't want to think about doing it out. That's what will happen. If you lose whatever open space left in the by. But if you did something with conservation zone, where you allow some smaller units to be developed, you could preserve 50% of the open space and link it all together. So that you could actually plan about preserving farmland or critical water resources or whatever the look of the town. Because you have to do some really significant planning to do that, and we would need help to do that. So we need professional help to help us think that out. You can do it now with AI. I mean, you can look what the town will look like if you do nothing in 50 years, and we wouldn't want to live here probably.
So you're saying doing nothing and
That's
building
consequence.
something else to the existing zoning would create or erode the world.
We would have houses on everything.
Yeah.
Large houses on everything because price of land is accelerating, the large lots of just become so expensive, okay, I'm just limit who gets it. But if you really design and thought about it, you could have smaller lots or small unit condo type things, but preserve significant amounts of the open space.
Yeah.
And if you link those types of developments together, you could you could create large amounts of open space, which will disappear with our current zone.
Yeah.
Will just disappear if we do absolutely nothing. But I don't have the expertise to do it as a citizen, an older citizen who, isn't gonna be that active that many more years. But you can do it.
Well, also, if you look at what happened in the 60s and 70s on Mountain Creek, none of that stuff was developed. There's over 700 1-acre units, meaning 700 acres of single family homes that were developed in 20 to 30 year period. They continue every last little pocket they can find. Every now and then there's a little tiny piece of, Mountain Creek preserve and this or that, but most of it is developed.
Yeah.
And that, when I was a kid, none of those existed. So it's, that's huge planning I think started around that time because they didn't know those people about that. And there's something about one cul-de-sac after another, which is great for families and community in the groups. But it also is about triggering a new school in Long Creek, the new fire station down there. I mean, those are the things that people are worried about now. Things that we're suggesting to help fill our students that we don't have. So it's a good thing.
And we do have conservation, some. But you might want to expand that. And then I realize that land has certain limits. We have to be able to dispose of the septic system. We have to have water. So that it would have to be well thought out and analyzed. It's good to preserve open space, still allow,
development to get more folks.
Yeah.
Without losing all of our open space. It gives us the feel of the town.
And I feel like a lot of communities, particularly, are grappling with that. You know, a desire maybe to limit development, but a recognition that not doing anything will maybe it's a more of the open space like this. And so that's a common thread across many communities that they work with. I have a map here, the whole way that we can shift gears a little bit. I'm hearing from the group or from many of you that there's an interest in potentially multifamily or I guess I'm curious, like where in your mind would that go? Or any other changes to zoning based on the existing zoning and this vision for what we want or what we want to change?
Can you show us the commercial zone?
Yes. So these are all residential. So there's the Halls Road, which is that's like over here, right? So there is no commercial on this right now. Do you want to talk about the commercial for me? Oh, here's C30.
So Carvings, Falls Road, Soundview, those are the main.
And it's in the industrial.
And the industrial area.
Yes.
That's-
So you're saying specifically you would want to see, well, what was the question?
I just wanted to know where right now there are commercial.
So here, C30.
Roger Street. And then.
Yeah.
And just the, if you know, there are detailed soil maps in the whole town that have probably pretty good accuracy because they were developed more recently in the eighties and nineties.
Yeah.
But you could really define based on soil type where you could get better septic systems. And you could do better septics, but you certainly know where there's shallow soils and where there's lots of ledge and you're not gonna be able to really get septic systems in. But then there are also packaged sewage treatment plants that work today that could do, if it's assigned to the developer in your more densely developed areas that could deal with that. The limit's probably gonna be, where can you get water? I mean, the area that I live in, which is like off of Rose Lane, north of the old Line Inn, I had 3 houses lose water last summer. The wells went dry. So I mean, obviously you have to have water. And a lot of the houses that went dry are shallow wells. Okay, but we're not really monitoring that. One of the things that I think is very, very important. I have a family, a new family with 2 young kids moved in and they had no water last summer. The well went dry because of the combination of drought and shallow well. They had to bring in a tanker truck, but luckily there were openings big enough to put some water back in. They drilled, and I had another family, the drilled well went dry. They had to drill another few thousand feet to get water. So those types of things have to be analyzed if we're looking at obviously increased density. So it's beyond our capacity.
I want to just back in what you're saying. I have a well and I like having a well. I love well water. I don't want to switch that. I want to keep that and it's just, me and my cat. So we're doing okay. But I do worry about density. How would that affect Mile Creek Road wells and just wells in general?
Yeah, and so when we're analyzing where to put the increased density, it's, more sophistication than we have available at the municipal level. Or, you develop water system. And you can map out, and these are all mapped at large aquifer areas that are in this town and they're protected by state statute. And that's where you would put your community wells. And we do have community wells in Old Line. There's actually a map of them that you can see and look at. But it's doable, but it needs work and thought. And I think you can do both. If you keep the way the town looks now, and preserving more open space. We don't have the funds to buy. But doing nothing will change the way the town looks.
I want to second that thought too. I think we can do what maintain the character, but still have affordable housing, more housing for seniors.
Yeah, have a variety of housing for all. Okay.
I think we should assume we can do that.
Yeah. I mean, that should be our goal. Right. Hopefully we can.
So diversity of housing with you, right now, like, the seniors. And then housing.
Yeah.
Can they?
Yes.
Makes a lot of sense. So you're saying. I do, I mean, my mom's 85, she likes the fact, my mom's 85, she just bought a smaller house. And likes the fact now she belongs to town, she was in a house that family bought, and then she moved closer to me and into the small house where she belonged to town. Okay. So I think that is.
Yeah. I think that's what most older people prefer, to be in a community rather than
Right.
living off in corners.
Exactly.
That's,
So just in terms of where the housing goes,
Where-
it's environmental.
should be closer to.
You know, considerations, but then there's also sort of what the demand is, or, you know, it sounds like there's. And for older populations, it's nice to have the activity around, and you can get out, and you can walk around, see your neighbors and stuff like that. And we went through the visual preference, survey or the exercise earlier during the presentation. And so I'm hearing that there's an interest in your smaller, maybe multifamily dwellings. So what does that look like? I mean, I think a lot of the images that were shown were voted down very quickly. So like, what are the characteristics of multifamily housing you would like? And I know I recognize it also may differ depending upon where you're considering it within the community. So I encourage you to also mark this up.
Just something real quick is that, for instance, for multi-family, you have to understand, we have a limit of 2 bedrooms. I vote. They need to change that. Why not make it 3 bedrooms? Everybody wants the first floor master suite, and they want to put grandkids upstairs. You can only put 1 bedroom upstairs.
So in the existing multifamily districts, there's a limit to 2 bedrooms.
2
You
bedrooms,
cannot
it's right in here. I have. Current zone, yeah.
Limit to in multi and multi-family districts. Okay. Interesting, thank you.
Also, there's this whole thing about, you can't have anything over 3 stories in land, because most of it is on the, what is it called, the watershed? Gateway Commission, ruling.
Okay.
So you're not gonna have any high rises around, especially anywhere near that. So it's a tenant, too, so. It's really.
It's so deliberate, and gateway.
Right.
Yeah. And it's deliberate, we put ourselves in the big. Partly chose parts of town to be in the gateway. Then Saybrook chose other parts of town. Saybrook showed a few parts, we showed practically everything. The key,
So,
those United States.
so that was,
35.
and so do you, I'm sorry, I missed this, that was chosen, do you support that?
No, I wish they had done it. I wish they made an exception for, one place or two places, but they didn't. Changing that, this happened long before I was here.
Yeah.
So, in the 70s, 80s, and, but they did, and it's done, and changing it back will be very good.
It's very restricted to developers, because they can't even put a pitched roof on something, when you see it right in Niagara where flower is. They have that flat roof, yellow building, which is so lovely.
Yeah.
And, they have it, they just want to put a picture on it, and that requires them. But the black roofs, there's really anything else. There's strips here.
The bad news.
Noted. Okay. Who else for your really appreciate it. I think we're here. Okay, so you go back into the chair back up and then everything else can tear out with her. Thank you.
Yeah. I'd like to see that. That's fine.
That's why I found this on the stair. The bag was by the stairs, I think, that bag looks like this. All right.
That is. I don't know.
Okay, come on in, we want to get you home on time. Okay, let's come on in. All right, can I have everyone's attention? Hello, can I have your attention? I've got 8 minutes to send you home on time, like I promised, and I want to get it done. Come on in. So first of all, you were all fantastic. Thank you. I think the conversations were very productive. I learned a lot. I know people are passionate about this community, and I understand that that's where the energy is coming from, is that you love this community, you want to protect it. And we know that we have some different perspectives, but I think our challenge of working with your commission through this work is to understand what is right for your community going forward. And in many cases, what may be right may be making no changes to your zoning regulation at all. However, we do understand from people that there is a desire for things. So I'll briefly describe the discussion we had in our room, and I will ask Rory and Tony to take 2 minutes to do the same, so you have a sense as to the conversations that were held tonight. In our room, there was a lot of discussion and concern surrounding 830G, and that is the Connecticut statute that requires that any community that does not have 10% affordable housing allow developers to build affordable housing and to bypass the zoning regulations in doing so. We talked quite a bit about that and its implication for Old Lyme. We talked about the fact that Old Lyme is only at 1.36% affordable housing, I think, far off the 10%. And how it's really challenging for a community like Old Lyme to ever hit 10% affordable housing. So while that is a concern and is relevant to our discussion, our focus shouldn't be what can we do to get to 10%, because there's some, that's far off and it may be impossible to do given the lack of infrastructure you have, whether it's water or sewer, and likely may be undesirable because the scale of development you'd have to have. So that was kind of the foundation of our meeting, but we went beyond there. And we talked about the need for housing that is affordable and available to younger people and seniors. How ADUs could be part of that solution. How smaller, well-designed neighborhoods of smaller homes could be part of that solution. But that was countered and balanced against the legitimate concern people have about adversely impacting what makes this place special, right? The environment, the character, the nature that you have, and there's a real concern about larger scale development, really turning this into another town. And so that's what we have to balance in our work. So I can't say there was one clear directive with respect to zoning. We'll take a look at ADUs and some other opportunities. I think the general counsel that we received is be very careful to protect what we have. And we're receptive to some ideas, but we need to protect what we have. So that we talked obviously much more than that, but that was the central theme of the discussion.
Yeah, I think Francisco, it sounds like your group had a very similar discussion to our group. You know, ADUs came up quite a bit. It's the desire to make sure that we're preserving Old Lyme as it is. You know, people love Old Lyme as it is, and you know, want it to remain, you know, this rural character. We also talked about, you know, considering, you know, if you're adding multi-family larger units, the infrastructure required, the impact of the schools, all things that need to be considered. Like you mentioned, the diversity of housing types, thinking about, you know, cluster type developments or ADUs, different options. And then we, you know, talked about there is some, invest in things that are already built. The Rydeville development came up. There was a question about potentially, you know, maybe is there opportunity to add some housing at the senior center? Linewood was discussed. So, you know, again, you know, using what's already here, but making sure that the seniors and, young families are accommodated.
Would you say there was stronger sentiment to preserve and protect Old Lyme and keep things the way they are now and regulations the same? Or was there a lean towards some of the things you discussed?
I think overall, you know, keep what makes Old Lyme. But you know, just discussing options.
We're receptive to some ideas, provided you don't lose what, right.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Maintains, you know.
Thanks. And Tony, where's Tony? Go ahead, please.
So we started with, you know, what do you value? What's your value about Old Lyme? The rural feel, that it's quiet, that it's quaint, and there was a sentiment, you know, shared. I don't want change. And then the conversation evolved, and we started to explore. Okay, well, if we did nothing and we were to build out the community in the way that the existing zoning is, you would theoretically lose some of those things that you value, that rural character or the rural nature of the community. So there's then the conversation sort of moved into, okay, well, what are the types of developments that might permit you do some cluster development, so that we could preserve that open space, because truly that is one of the things that I think the entire group valued. You know, affordability for people that live here who would like to downsize, affordability for new families who could come in and sort of help with the economic vitality of the community. Those were values that were expressed. And the leap was then, well, we need more diversity in terms of our housing types. It can't only be single family, large lot home properties. So, you know, and there was an idea that, you know, multifamily is at least in our group, I felt like there was mixed perspectives on it, but I think that, again, like Rory's group, people were receptive to the idea and recognized that it had value, both for economic vitality, walkability. That was something we heard. As people get older, they want to come into a community where there's the ability to walk. There could be, you know, greater support for businesses potentially, but that was all sort of, you know, framed against or presented with recognition that we do not want to erode our natural resources. There's concerns for like well water, not depleting those types of resources, being conscious about, where the development goes. So I think that pretty much, oh, and ADUs came up, absolutely. That was, desire for less restriction, when it comes to ADUs. And also changing the limit, this is a very specific change, a request to change the limit, of 2 bedrooms in the existing multifamily zone. Thought that was interesting and
Okay, we had a very similar discussion. I failed to mention all the references to water supply and that you talked about, because we had a very similar discussion. Okay, so where do we go from here? My team will have the challenge of trying to capture all this lightning in a bottle, and we'll be doing that over the next couple of days. We'll be writing a summary report of the discussions that we had this evening, and we will very soon make that available as a document on the town's website. And it's not hard to find the page. If you go planning and zoning, there's a page, a link there. It's dedicated. All of our presentations and meeting summary reports are provided there for you. We will conduct another workshop, as I said earlier, to this effect. The subject of that workshop will be your commercial zones and economic development. And we'll have very similar format. It will be here on September 15th. So please attend. This attendance was tremendous tonight. So thank you for coming out. We would love to have you for that workshop. Additionally, I mentioned this earlier, we have an online survey that asks many of these questions and offers you an opportunity to provide open-ended responses. You can write us your thoughts. You can provide more detail than maybe you were able to express this evening. Please take the survey if you haven't done so already. There's a link right on the splash page of the town website. There's the QR code and link there as well. This presentation, along with the clicker survey results, will be made available in addition to the workshop summary. Our work with the commission will get going this fall as we complete our next workshop. We sit down with the commission and basically walk through everything we heard from you and start making decisions regarding, are there changes needed to your zoning regulations? And if so, what kind of changes can we make that are consistent with what the community has told us and respond to some of the needs, whether it's strengthening the regulations to better preserve and protect open space, or to make the regulations more flexible to create opportunities for housing. All of that would be on the table with the commission. That process will take no less than a year. We've got a lot of work to do. And before anything gets adopted into your regulations, it's going to go through the public hearing process like any other amendment. So you'll be afforded an opportunity to review it, to provide comment, to attend hearings on it. But we are months, if not a year away from another round of amendments. We're just getting started with this phase of the work. So thank you again, everyone, for coming out this evening, for being very thoughtful, for being patient with us. And I'm going to let you go. If you have a question, I'm happy. If you just come to the front, I'd be happy to answer it for you. Thank you, everybody.